Welcome to Module 3 of Understanding Silence in Your Relationship. Today, we're going to talk about probably the most important part of this whole course. So let's do it. As we move through building you a personal power plan, we are now in the W, which is the work through the research. I have never been a fan of reinventing the wheel. I have always been on the side of what has been studied and what has been known to give people effective results. We will work through the research and we will investigate what those people in the social sciences and the psychology and all of them have been recommending on how we deal with the silence in our intimate relationships. I can't say enough about this topic because this is also why I have spent over 10 years of my life in higher education, because I always believed that let's do what we know has been proven. According to research, these are the best personal tools I could find for you. And I picked these specifically because A, they are personal, as in you don't need to rely on your partner. You don't even need to rely on anybody else. And B, because they are doable. If I can do them and I'm nobody special and other people have done them and they're nobody special, then so can you. We will be talking about 6 very important tools here. I'm just going to scan through these tools quickly because we will get into the nitty-gritty of it a little bit more. But for now, I just want for you to see what these tools are, plant the seed in your head about how these are going to be useful for you. And they will be. I know they will be. This is why I'm giving you them. And just kind of sit back and get a glance of what it is I'm talking about. Number 1, we check in with yourself. We will do this because it prevents emotional overload. It does all of these beautiful things. It sets you up to what you're going to say no to and what you're going to say yes to and what you could kind of consider. It sets you up to stop blaming yourself because that's very easy to do. Now, there's a very difference between self-blame and also holding yourself accountable. But when we pause long enough to evaluate that, we can sort out which one is what. I'm not a fan of self-blame, but I am a huge fan of being responsible for our actions and making right what we wronged where we can. Also, when you do check in with yourself, it takes you away from sometimes feeling like a victim. I'm not saying that you weren't victimized, but I'm saying is I know what thinking like a victim is like. I can get trapped in it. Honest to goodness, I used to get trapped in it for days and sometimes longer. And so this can shift us away from that onto what is doable given what I have. And then, of course, the most helpful one of all is it's actually very, very, very good for your mental health to just pause and check in. There will be a little bit more, quite a bit more on this later on. Tool number 2, self-respect. We can very easily stray away from valuing ourselves. We can forget that we are important. We can be so caught up in trying to fix and trying to manage and trying to cope to the point, and walking on eggshells, to the point that we neglect our own needs and we forget about what it is we will tolerate and what we won't. This is closely aligned with setting boundaries. We set boundaries because we respect ourselves, because we can ground ourselves in self-value and self-worth. A lot more on this later. Tool number 3, speaking up. If you have seen any of my other social content, it's a lot. I swear about at least easily 30 or 40% of it is in speaking up. I understand the value. It's not just my own preference. This is also where the research has shown to make a big difference in intimate relationships, and especially when you're experiencing it as a receiver or even as a giver. It does these beautiful things like prevents misunderstanding so easy. And then it builds on the topic of self-respect that I just talked about. And it does the number one reason I hate people holding back is because there are building blocks. They are building blocks of resentment that becomes a wall. And what happens to that wall? It becomes solid over time. And then suddenly relationships end, well, seemingly suddenly, but really it ended with the first words that were not spoken. This is big stuff. Obviously, it also encourages healthy communication. The more you do it, the better you get at it. The more practice you get at speaking up, the more practice your partner is getting at receiving. And again, the better the more your partner is communicating to you, the better you are at becoming a good listener. These are they seem like they're fairly easy steps, and they really are, but there are complex layers to it. And at some point, I will be running simply a communications lab of some sort because I really believe in this stuff. And then, of course, yes, one of the reasons I am really hard on giving a lot of these kinds of courses is because if we never, one of the things that people struggle with at the end of a relationship is, did I do everything there is to do? Oh, I regret not speaking. I regret not saying. I regret not listening. And so this is one of the big reasons to do this kind of work of speaking up. So if the relationships end, which unfortunately they sometimes do, then you will walk away knowing that you have tried. You will remember the moments that you did speak up and the moments you tried harder to speak up, and you will remember whether or not it was received. Tool number 4. Big stuff. I know I'm giving you a lot of information condensed quite thickly, and I fully understand that. Tool number 4 is establishing healthy boundaries. These are just basically things, these are going to be your reasons to say no and to say yes, and to reflect upon whether you want to say no or whether you want to say yes. But this is exactly what you need quite often to protect your emotional well-being. And yes, there we go. There are your personal limits. And the part, I love this part here, without feeling guilty. How can you say no without feeling guilty? How can you say yes to something that you know without feeling guilty? That's because you've thought it through and you've weighed the pros and cons and you've evaluated what the consequences are for yourself if you do not say no, if you do not say yes. When you know why you're doing it, there should not be that much guilt. We never want to hurt our partner. We never want to make them feel bad. It does get down to the severe consequences of not saying yes or no to these particular things, especially if the consequence is you suffering or lighting yourself up on fire to keep somebody else warm. They are about taking care of yourself while still being respectful of others, which is always the point. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to be cruel. We don't have to be abusive in any way. Setting boundaries can be done with kindness and grace. People do it all the time. Tool number 5 is self-soothing and self-regulation. These are really, really big in the research about ways to manage and deal with the big feelings that come with the silent treatment or needing space or somebody emotionally withdrawing or you needing silence, emotionally shutting down, emotionally withdrawing. Whatever it is, there is a ton of research that points to self-soothing and self-regulation as something that will serve you very, very well. The difference there, yes, self-soothing is simply about sorting and calming, whereas the self-regulation takes it a step further, so you know how to manage it thereafter. Very, very important, and there will be more on this a little bit later. I will fail you as a professional if I don't talk about this side. Unfortunately, sometimes no matter what you do from your side, there is only so much you can affect to change the relationship or to change how your relationship feels and the outcome of it. So it's very important to understand this part. Now, I need to really talk about this with caution. I've made a list here, and let's face it, all of us can fall into one of those very easily. It's like what I'm talking about here is signs that it might be time to leave. These particular ones are common to all of us in some level. I mean, these aren't anything particularly dangerous or special. However, if we are talking about the prevalence, as in the extreme nature and how damaging and depressing almost that these are there, then we might have to reconsider what our relationship future should be. And what I'm saying is, I'm not just talking about somebody, for example, who feels disrespected. I'm talking about someone who always feels disrespected, even when it's painfully obvious to anyone in the room that no disrespect was meant or intended, or somebody who no change after attempts to fix. This is someone who, for example, yeah, they say they're going to try, but they don't really try. So, of course, there's no change. And that's also the other side of you making all these attempts to fix, and the results aren't happening. And so, again, I'm talking about these in the extreme side, maybe not extreme, but sort of really polarized to the side of dysfunction. And we talk about emotional neglect. It's easy for us to get preoccupied to the point that we forget or ignore our partner's needs, not because we hate them, but because we just are human. But I'm talking about someone who consistently does this and doesn't do a dang thing to change that constant feeling of loneliness for yourself. If you all you do is feel lonely, and you've tried this and you've tried that and you've taken this course and you've looked at all the tools and you've used them all, and maybe you've had some personal counseling for yourself, or whatever it is, and no matter what you do, the constant and pervasive feeling of loneliness is there. Again, I'm not saying this to encourage anyone to leave. I am merely doing a little bit of straight talk with you to understand that there are some dynamics that no matter what we do, we cannot change because we are only one part of the relationship. Now it's time for a moment to pause on everything you have learned in this module in terms of the research that's there. I want you to think about, hey, I've already done those. Hey, that's pretty awesome. I'm kind of been doing that, but a little bit. So I really want you to kind of connect with the little bit that I've already given you here in terms of the personal tools. And I also want you to consider, well, that one is not really me. I don't see myself that's okay too. I just wanted to introduce a bunch to you, and I wanted you to reflect on what they could mean to you in the future. And I encourage you to have an open mind as we proceed further into this course.